Hello, welcome everybody. I hope we have a very interesting 20 minutes for you about ICOs, which are a very hot topic when you look out here. So the three of us, we're from 3 different countries, 3 different backgrounds, but we're all busy working in this space and have quite a number of projects ongoing or under our belts already. So maybe I'll start by asking the panel to introduce themselves, and maybe with Adam.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Hello, hello. I'm Adam Vaziri. I'm a blockchain lawyer. I was one of the first blockchain lawyers in Europe in 2013, and have worked in policy and designing government regulation around virtual currencies and blockchain in general. And in the past couple of years have been concentrating on building regulatory technology to support blockchain. And one of my projects is BlockPass.
Hello everyone, my name is Olga Alexeyeva and I'm currently working for innovative blockchain startup Smart Valley. It is a decentralized scoring platform that brings together investors, experts and startups into a professional community. So I'm currently occupied with investor relations in our company, with building international partnerships, with setting up our representative offices across the globe, organizing roadshow, event management. So since we're a startup, almost everyone has to be busy with everything in our company. So my first touch point with ICO began in 2016 when I moved to Las Vegas in the United States and I met legendary Michael Turpin. We call him Mr. Bitcoin in the United States. And I had a great experience with ICOs with him because he's perceived to be the very first person to launch the very first ICOs in the United States. In my background, I hold a degree in strategic marketing at Imperial College London, and I used to work in 4 countries, Russia, US, UK, and Italy.
And lastly, I'm Brian. I got involved in blockchain seriously last year when I was involved in an ICO which was in the identity space, so something I share with Adam. And that experience and getting involved as an advisor in other ICOs since then led me to get involved in a business very like Olga's, which is to try and professionalize this space. So I suppose that's kind of why we're all here today, is to talk about where this is going and what the changes are, how it's evolving. So if I was maybe to give a few thoughts on where we were, say, last year when people were attempting to do this and where we are this year and some of the changes that we have, I probably see things like professionalizing of the space. I know that you're a lawyer, but there's very few of these, but there's more and more that have experience. And it's not just legal, it's tax and everything else, so the professional services are arriving. Compliance, I think the original ones didn't really think about KYC or anything like that, or who these people were. That's now an integral part of how things are doing. And you know, the whole governance agenda, and we heard about transparency and things earlier on. There's a whole lot of that coming through. There's an emergence of standards. It might not quite be law yet, but we have, like the FinTech Association here and others, coming out with best practices and how things should be done and should not be done. I think there's the own very special way in this industry for raising funds is emerging with its own tools and techniques and arrangements. I would say that speed is increasing. There's more things happening, more innovation, and that's not slowing down anytime soon, I think. And I think we're moving into more established companies giving things a go. Last year, you know, the one I use is always Jesus Coin. It was a successful raise. You can trade in 3 exchanges. It'll save you from hell. But you know, it's maybe when it comes to your typical project, maybe we've moved on from that to more serious ventures this year. And I think the last feature is that we're moving into tokenized funds and security tokens in a more meaningful way. And the infrastructure for that is being built from a legal and other perspective at the moment. So maybe just to dive into questions, I'll ask a few, but at any stage, please feel free to ask any of us anything. And I'll start with Olga, if that's okay. So can I have your perspective on fundraising, what everybody's trying to do here? How is that evolving?
Yes, you know, the most frequently asked question from the startups who come to our platform is, what is the most effective way of raising funds for an ICO? And to be honest, And it's really funny. Sometimes in the majority of cases, these ICOs even do not need to raise funds through an ICO. They can launch an ordinary private placement or raise funds with classic venture capitalists. But let's see, we have great experience with doing ER and fundraising in more than 30 countries. And from my perspective, from my own experience and what I see from our startups, the most effective way is to have and organize peer-to-peer, one-to-one meetings with investors. Each investor is unique. Each investor needs a personalized approach, and you need to build truthful relationship with all of them. Another technique that proved to be also effective, we organized so-called investment dinners sponsored by Smart Valley in about 20 countries across the globe, but there we invited not more than 10 people, and about 3 or 4 team members from Smart Valley approached each investor more personalized. So in this case, I think I have answered your question about the most effective ways.
Okay.
There are, of course, lots of other different ways, but since we're short of time, we can maybe jump onto another question.
Okay. When you're raising that cash, anyone who's been through an ICO process knows when you're coming to the end, you're effectively out there in public with a big target on your back, and every type of hacker and other person trying to steal those funds is going to be attacking you. So scammers, fraudulent misrepresentation, how do you see things evolving there?
Yeah, so how many people here have participated in an ICO? How many people here have actually conducted an ICO? Okay. So if you haven't participated in an ICO, there are a few risks that you should be aware of. The first risk is Bitcoin is not like your bank. When you go to your bank and you make a transfer, you can go back to your bank later and say, well, I'm sorry, I transferred to the wrong person. Can we recall the transfer? And maybe you'll have a 50% chance of getting your money back, roughly, if the recipient is a bona fide recipient. In Bitcoin, that is not the case. As soon as the transfer occurs, there's no way of recalling the transfer. The only way of recalling it is to actually do a hard fork, which is completely not feasible. And then the second point is, if someone presents to you an account number in a bank, and say, this is my account number, please send it. Normally, when you do the transfer using your bank, you can actually verify through the SWIFT process and IBAN process who the actual recipient is and who the bank is. Whereas with Bitcoin, if you see an address and you send your money and it's the wrong address, it's gone forever. So you can see with ICOs that rely upon virtual currencies as the main transactional tool, it can be very easy for investors to be essentially scammed by third parties involved or circling around an ICO. So it's something to be very wary of. When an ICO is approaching, there are third parties who will hover around like vultures and present themselves and impersonate the founders of the ICO and say, hey, I'm the founder of the ICO, send your money here. And it sounds really silly to say this, but a lot of people get caught out and they lose their funds and there's no way of retrieving their funds. And no police authority is really going to assist in that regard. So it's something to be very wary of. And for the issuers, the people who are issuing the tokens, to be aware of the fact that every other scammer in the world is going to come along when your ICO is about to start and try and extort other people from their funds. So that level of weariness and alertness is necessary whether you are the participant or whether you are the issuer in that process. And there's no real, there are a few technical measures that can be instituted to mitigate some of that risk, which is, for instance, if you are the issuer, making sure that you control your domain, that you secure your domain. A lot of ICOs, unfortunately, on the day of the ICO, it said coinico.com. the hacker hacked into coinico.com and transferred the DNS servers to another server and changed the addresses. These types of little security measures that you would expect to see in a fairly sound operation is absolutely necessary. It has to be thought about and mitigated against. So that's one thing. So scamming, managing the risk associated with scamming, and there are all sorts of different types of scams that one should be aware of. The second is, if you are going to invest, it's about knowing what the process is in advance. And oftentimes an ICO will give you an indication of what that A, B, C process is. And another point is, if you make a mistake, then unfortunately there's not much you can do. And if you send to the wrong address, there's not much you can do. You can try and make a claim against the issuer, but in reality, there's not a lot of recourse at your fingertips. So you have to be very careful in the process to not get caught out by scammers, but also careful that you follow the instructions correctly.
Thanks. Thank you. So back to Olga. When you have all of these projects, hopefully well secured, and people are making a decision to invest in them, in your experience, how do people who are willing to fund these projects put money into a token? How do they distinguish one project from the next?
You know, there is no exact answer to this question, but I conducted my personal research. For the last 6 months, I met about, I counted on my own, 956 investors and funds across the globe. And each investor, I asked each investor the following question: what are your main factors of success? How do you take a decision which startup is worth your investment, which startup is worth your attention? And how do you think, which answer was the most popular? Just try to guess. Any guess? The personality of founder and co-founder. So that was at the very top. The second factor that was taken into account by these investors is the viability of an idea. How unique it is your idea. How do you sell this idea? What is your, how marketeers call it, unique selling proposition? It's like the same as in traditional business. Of course, there are a few other factors that are taken into consideration. For example, in the United States, if you are short of proper documentation, none of the investors will even talk to you. You need to be fully prepared, first of all, in terms of legal side. Yes, as Adam will talk about it a bit later. Because the SEC in the United States is putting more and more burden on ICO startups. So other factors, the top management team needs to have a proven track record, for sure, and successful case studies in their background. Reputation, that is very, very important. Language barriers. You know, we have, especially in our country, we have really cool, strong teams with really cool ideas, but unfortunately none of the team members even speak good English language. And when we send these startups for the roadshow abroad and they pitched their projects with low quality, let's say, English and low English speaking skills, that was a failure. That was a real failure. And if you want really to raise funds outside, yes, somewhere abroad, in Asia, in Europe, in North America, you need to speak English fluently and professionally. Among other factors, what was mentioned among my investors was the scalability of the idea. The law firm, the reputation of your law firm, the reputation of your escrow agent, token economy, that's very important because sometimes we came up to the conclusion with the ICOs our company consulted that these ICOs, these companies even didn't need any token. They could exist without token. They could build a successful business without this token, right? Just launching private placement with shares B, why not? Yeah, did I answer your question?
I think so, and I'm not sure, are we running out of time? We have 5 more minutes.
Okay,
Well,
great.
if anyone has a question from the floor, please interrupt. Okay, there's one. Hold on, we'll get a microphone.
I have a question about the personality of the founder. Did you ask those investors what is that they are looking for? What is that exactly? What?
Trust. Trust. So if the founder can build trustful relationship with this investor, then it might work out, for sure.
Yeah, I would say that they're investing in the team. They believe that the team can do what they say. Anyone else have a question, or will I ask one of Adam? So Adam is a lawyer for a long time in the space. Obviously, we heard from when people are analyzing whether to put funds into it, it's an important thing that the paperwork is right. But this is a moving feast. It's changing all the time. How would you see it? How would you recommend it's done properly, and how do you see it evolving?
Yeah, so the key point is a user, when at the point of purchase, what exactly are they purchasing? Are they actually investing, or are they acquiring something which is not an investment? Now, if you heard the SEC hearings even yesterday, or I mean even in February, they were very categoric that practically all ICOs would be classified as securities. So the nature of a transaction in the US is an investment transaction. But that's not necessarily the case outside of the US, and the US doesn't speak for the rest of the world. In other parts of the world, an ICO could be framed as a sale of a commodity. In Hong Kong, for instance, tokens that are not securities are classified as virtual commodities, which are not in themselves regulated. So therefore, the sale of a virtual commodity is much the same as like selling gold or selling some other kind of commodity. However, what is important is the relationship between the purchaser and the issuer, investor, and the purchaser, depending on the nature of that relationship. And what's critical in that regard is that the person who is investing, they have the tools at their fingertips to be able to distinguish between what is an investment and what is a purchase, and what is the difference between the two. And what is not available at the moment is those tools to be able to distinguish. You see oftentimes in the token terms of business, everything is disclaimed, and there's no real clarity around what is being sold. And so what will come is more standardization around all of these different categories of tokens and categories of schemes around the sales of these tokens. And we should expect to see that over the coming year. If we don't see that, the problem is that it will create a lot of confusion in the market. People will be purchasing something that they expect is one thing, but they get another. And that confusion can lead to a lot of litigation. We're seeing that some of the signs with Tezos. Tezos is a great example of something going a little bit wrong and then going massively wrong. That's partly because Bitcoin price went up so dramatically that a small problem in the Tezos governance structure ended up with a class action lawsuit against Tezos. And the same precedent's now being used against Ripple to claim that Ripple was selling in unregistered securities. So the relationship, the transparency and the clarity around what is being sold, and the jurisdictional clarity, so practically everything sold in the US is a security, but the jurisdictional clarity are these fundamental components you would expect to see over the coming year in order for it to become much more of a universal and much more of an acceptable way of either raising funds, either through an ICO or actually participating in purchasing that asset.
Thanks, Adam. That's the evolution that's ongoing when it comes to legal, and I think that's going to continue apace. But also, Olga is, I believe, writing a book on crypto marketing, which he believes is quite different than regular marketing. So maybe some perspectives on how this particular niche has its own characteristics.
Yes, so traditional marketing aims at promoting and selling the already existing product on the market. Whereas crypto marketing, the main purpose of crypto marketing is to raise funds in order to build the product, a new product, and further elaborate your product or service. That is actually the main difference between traditional, conventional marketing activities and crypto marketing. And do you know why I decided to write this book about crypto marketing, especially in the Russian language? Because lots of ICO startups who come to our platform, they are lacking this structured knowledge in their mind. They do not know what to start with. Okay, they know about crypto, they know what ICO is, but they do not know how to start. So we need, all the time, we need to educate them. That is why we decided to write the special guideline for our ICO startups. And crypto marketing, generally speaking, consists of two things. First of all, about building investor relations, and in consequence, raise funds for your startup. And the second part consists of building community around your product, right? You know, when an ICO startup comes to us and say, we ask them a question, why do you need to raise funds for? And they say, just raise funds. Then we say goodbye, right? Because it will never work out. And it is one thing to raise funds. Another thing is to, let's say, smartly use these funds. And by the way, I forgot here to mention when I was answering your question about factors of success for an ICO, the most provocative question from investors that usually address this question to our ICO startups is, how would you argument the use of funds, right? So you are raising, let's say, $1 million. Why do you need this particular amount of money? Please send me the document, it is called use of funds, how you're going to spend this amount of money. And if you do not have an exact and clear answer to this question, then it is very unlikely that you will further meet up this investor in the future. So regarding crypto marketing itself, there are lots of things that are typical, particularly for crypto marketing. I think most of you are aware of them. Bounty campaign, listings on crypto exchanges, listings in ratings, publications in crypto media, building a community in Telegram and other social media. But these maybe all these things that I have mentioned about, they are ordinary, you know, they are quite simple, but they are not well structured in the mind of most of the ICO startups. Because all these startups, they are young entrepreneurs in most cases, and they need to be educated somehow.
We're getting the signals to finish up now, so is there any last questions from the audience? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. Any questions, please ask us afterwards. Thank you.